Welcome back, everyone, to Natural AF Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this episode, we're interviewing Rachel Vaughan, an amazing guest from Down Under. And she has an amazing, powerful story to tell.
She is such a beautiful soul. I've had the honor of doing Rachel's psychic development course, and we've kept in touch since then. And it was, such an honor to have her on the podcast and to not only share her story, but share her vision for the world and where it's going. And, you know, she is such a positive, beautiful ray of light in this world. And it was definitely one of the highlights of our podcast to have her on and have her share what she's sharing. We actually decided to move this interview up. So we've got a ton of interviews banked up at the moment. And had we left it in the same order of when we recorded, we wouldn't have released it until the end of January. However, she does talk about in this interview about the ley lines coming into permanent harmony at the end of this year, which is actually now only in a couple of weeks' time. So we really wanted to release it in a timely manner so that people are aware of this shift that's happening and can tap into it. Just be able to spread the word on, you know, her work with Lay Love Down and tapping into these ley lines and portals and putting positive energy into them instead of all the very negative dark energy that has been put into them for a very long time now. So, yeah.
And we're in a different recording space, as you can tell.
Yeah. So as you guys can see, for those of you watching, we've got a very different background, a very beautiful background. But we've been having internet issues up at our place, the joys of podcasting from home. Sometimes that's just what you got to deal with, but we had no other option but to record down in the other house on our property. So for those that would like to support the show and our endeavor to eventually have a dedicated studio space for our podcasting, there's a number of ways in which you can do that. Of course, you can always share this episode with anyone that you think will get value out of it, anyone that you think will enjoy these conversations. Like, comment, and also follow us on socials and share our social media content across with your friends and family.
You can also help us out by going to naturalartform.com. Whether you're in the States or in Australia, we service to both continents, and check out our offerings there. And if it resonates with you and you want to buy some, give it as a gift. Product that's available on both continents is Alleviate, which is the flagship product that I invented for a shoulder injury that I had. And it's a very powerful remedy using DMSO, a bunch of organic herbal oils, and magnesium that's very useful for arthritis. In fact, we just had a woman at the markets this weekend tell us about how she couldn't close her thumb. She couldn't bend her thumb, but she's been using our product for at least a month since the last time we were in that area. And she can now close her thumb like that.
All of her hands, it's actually increased the mobility in all of her hands. She's got arthritic joints all through her hands, and she was showing us. She said, I wasn't able to do this before. So amazing feedback. It's doing very good things.
If you're in Australia, we also have natural deodorant that I made that's also a magnesium lotion. And it's kind of an innovative approach to these kind of products. And for me, it actually reverses body odor. So it's a handy thing to have, especially when you're sweating it out in the summer.
Oh, yeah, especially now, guys, in Australia where we are, it's very humid, very sweaty at times. And I've got to say, this is the only natural deodorant I've ever used, and I've tried a lot of them over the years. It's the only natural deodorant I've ever used that actually I can put it on once in the morning and I don't have to reapply, and I pretty much never get BO anymore.
Yeah.
Like when it's really hot and sweaty. I generally don't get BO a lot, but when it's hot and sweaty, you know, when it's really hot and you're sweating a lot, it's only normal. But yeah, amazing product.
Yeah. So all proceeds would go to helping us fix our internet and survive Mercury retrograde, which we will do, God willing.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did, guys, and let's get into it.
Yes.
Rachel Vaughan is a whistleblower, researcher, public speaker, and childhood survivor of satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra mind control programming. She is also a psychic medium with 21 years of professional reading experience, as well as a lifetime of interactions with the spirit world. Rachel has spent the past 18 years imploring Australian authorities to investigate the satanic cult who abused her as a child in the 1970s and 80s. While some incarcerations have taken place, she continues to be frustrated with certain individuals in power who refuse to properly investigate multiple crimes. This has led Rachel to participate in a series of interviews, roundtables, and public speaking engagements as she continues to fight for justice, both for herself and those unable to speak for themselves. Rachel funds herself by giving readings as a psychic medium, as well as teaching a psychic development course covering how to read auras, psychic protection, how to manifest ethically, and how to identify earth energies such as ley lines and portals. An eternal optimist, Rachel maintains that we are immortal souls having a human experience who can attain peace and success despite our trauma. Over the past 4 years, Rachel has become acutely aware of a large swathe of humanity experiencing a spiritual ascension. During this process, many incarnate souls have come to understand the depth of depravity of those who have held power on Earth for millennia. She passionately believes that the current ascension process of Earth, fueled by humanity's collective spiritual awakening, can facilitate a change from the current satanic system into something we will be proud to pass on to our children and grandchildren. A big part of that ascension process involves balancing the Earth's energies and ley lines of our planet. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yes.
Thank you for having me, Dylan. Lovely to see you both, and lovely to be here and to share some information today.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're honored that you would show up on our show, and this is a new show, and the conversation that we're going to have today, I think, is so critically important, and I just love that this is part of kind of our initiation into sharing information and beliefs and all this. I can't think of a better guest to have on about this topic. So
yeah, it's such an honor to have you on, Rach. So we just want to open it up first and give you the floor. So for anyone that doesn't know you, just share a bit of your background and maybe some of the most significant life experiences that have sort of led you to where you are today and the work that you're doing.
Beautiful. Okay, so I was brought up, let's start in the hard stuff. I was brought up in a satanic cult. My father was an ASIO operative, which is a secret services operative. He had impunity from prosecution. He was a pedophile. He was incestuous. He was also a procurer of child rape material, which I was unfortunately the subject of. But, these were snuff movies as well. He was a murderer. My two siblings and I have all witnessed these atrocities. We've all been subject to these atrocities. It didn't just involve those things, though. It also involved medical experimentation. So as I was mentioning off screen, there is a military background to my family. So my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was a telecommunications officer, just like my father was a telecommunications officer. People don't realise that the telecommunications officers have access to the tunnels and the bunkers that were used in the Second World War and built specifically for the Second World War, though we never had any troops on our country. But because of that, there was a 1938 mandate to build tunnels and trenches and bunkers within 20 feet of the back door of every house, every business place, every meeting place. So the whole of Australia was undercut with tunnels, trenches and bunkers, and my father had access to all of that information. Now, there was the Postmaster General's office. They had all the maps, but they were confiscated by the telecommunications, by Telecom, the telco, the name of the telco back when I was a child in the 70s and 80s. So all of that information was then held by the telcos. And this is where child trafficking occurs. I was trafficked in tunnels. I was trafficked to many different bunkers in the locale that I grew up in. I grew up on a street called Macklin Street in Edwardstown in South Australia. And my father had a brick kiln, an old brick kiln that had been transformed into a telecommunications bunker underneath the main shed. He bought the property knowing that it was there. The previous owner was also a telecommunications officer. My grandfather's property at Stansbury that my father inherited also has a telecommunications bunker. So when you think about it from that perspective, this is all very clandestine, secretive. I do wonder if my grandfather, who survived 2 wars, if he was perhaps a spy himself. He certainly didn't like my father, but they tolerated each other. On that property is buried the 3 Beaumont children who disappeared in 1966. So this is a very big case and it's internationally known. And it's not the only big case that my father's involved in. My brother, Andrew McIntyre, who had one of my father's very close friends, Anthony Munro, incarcerated in 2016. for the abuses that he perpetrated against Andrew as a child, and another man who doesn't like to be named. Anthony Munro is the co-accused with my father. One of them, they are the suspects, but, there's all these other suspects because they like to sort of try and spread it around to try and, they've got patsies all over the place in South Australia, and probably in the other states as well, to cover up for these people because, these crimes, we've still got it happening now. Children are still being trafficked. They're still being trafficked through tunnels, or they're being trafficked very openly through the Department of Child Protection. And most of the children that are taken in through those departments, it's for emotional abuse, 60%. So we're not even talking physical or sexual abuse, even though it's well known that children in state care die often, and that they get pregnant underage often, and that they're 6 times more likely to be sexually abused. So it's so obvious that this is, and it's a $6 billion a year industry in Australia alone. Wow. It's bigger than the car industry. So there are some books. The Pedophile Racket is a fantastic book to read. There are so many people exposing this now. I really think it's going to come out. But with my particular example, I started exposing this in 2006, along with my 2 siblings who were also abused. We've been validated recently by a major crime detective who's told my brother Andrew, who had Anthony Munro put away. Andrew was also instrumental in having Andrew Pike put away for 18 years. So that's another of our father's very close friends who's a convicted pedophile. There's 3 of them. There's Graham Bennett Fraser, who was an ex-chief of inspector of police as well, who abused me as a child. So a major crime detective told my brother Andrew McIntyre earlier this year that they cannot exhume the remains of the Beaumont children from the sinkhole at Stansbury that used to be my grandfather's property and then my father's property, and now is owned by 2 of my other siblings, because of the suppression order on the Mulligan inquiry. Now, the Mulligan inquiry was about state wards who had been abused and disappeared whilst in custody. And there's a lot. There were 600 from I think the Goodwood Orphanage, which was about a very short distance from where we grew up. And the Glandore Boys Home, 106 boys went missing. That's two to three streets from where I grew up on Macklin Street in Edwardstown. That's in Glandore. There were tunnels between the Glandore Boys Home, our house, and in between was a butcher and a baker. And I don't want to go too much into that because, there's too much already that you guys have had to take in. I've been validated. So basically, if they're not going to dig up the Beaumont children because of that suppression order, even though the suppression order in terms of reference were for state wards, the Beaumont children were not state wards. That is proof that there are countless state wards buried on that property, as I have been saying, as my brother and sister have been saying since 2006. I've recently been paid a victim of crime compensation payment for the abuses that my father perpetrated against me. And one of the things that I like to point out, even though it's bloody horrific, but it needs to be said, I've been saying since 2006, and I was sending letters out to parliamentarians in 2006 saying my father was the body boy for the family murders, a very horrific set of murders in Australia in the 70s and 80s of young men and young boys who were mutilated, sexually abused, killed, and then left out to be found, which was my father's MO. There are many of my father's MO with these children and these young boys. And one specifically was a particular injury that he liked to inflict to the back end, which he did to me and which I've just recently been compensated for. And yet, because I've got a permanent injury and I have a proctologist report, a professor of proctology's report to prove that this occurred, and yet the authorities still will not charge him. He's dead. 2017 he died. There was an investigation happening when he died. I seriously consider he was given some sort of pillow treatment or something to get rid of him. Because after that, the Special Crimes Unit told me, you can't convict a corpse. So they just gave up. But this is the level of corruption in my state, in Australia as a whole. This is a place where child rape material is produced regularly. We've just had a case with a guy called Ashley Griffith, who's been put away for life, and he was allowed to keep abusing little children in childcare centres for 20 years. There's a woman called Yolanda who blew the whistle on him. She's got charges against her. That's how Australia operates. Now, it's getting harder and harder and harder for this to continue. The reason I like to point out so frequently that I had this victim of crime compensation payment, they couldn't not pay me. It's extremely rare. A barrister friend, so I'm still astonished when I got that payment. He said ex gratia payments, so payments for people who do not get a conviction against their abuser, they don't happen. They don't happen in my state. It happened for me because I had so much evidence and they couldn't avoid it any longer. I believe that this is all going to come out very soon with the Beaumont case, with the fact that my father was involved. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given me that payment. And it was a pittance, by the way. It wasn't a lot of money. What is really interesting with all of that is I have not just pointed out that my father sexually abused me, that I was trafficked, and I've proven the existence of the tunnels and the bunkers that I was abused in. I've also talked about satanic ritual abuse. Now, for somebody who has spoken about such things, I work as a psychic. For somebody who is openly talking about these things, I've given a lot of interviews to be compensated in that way. Things are shifting. They are shifting. Otherwise, I would have just been knocked off, although I don't think they can. I think they've tried many times and they haven't been able to. They are cornered. It's a testing time. We've got to all be really careful and keep vigilant. But the shift has already occurred, and I think that they're scrambling. So as much as that was a horrific introduction for your poor listeners and watchers, be assured this is shifting. I would never have received that payment otherwise.
Yeah. Well, that last part, that's really good to hear that there's a shift. And when you say the shift has already happened, like, can you go more into that? What shifted?
So we've come into an energetic shift. So everything that is physical around us is energy. If you look at quantum physics, every atom is surrounded by all these energetic particles and empty space. It seems solid, but if you look into it from a quantum physics point of view, it isn't. We are energy having a physical experience. When you have these major energetic shifts like we're having at the moment, so just for some examples, there are many, many prophecies from many different ancient cultures that this time would bring about a big shift from a satanic system to a golden system, a love light system. Not that I'm saying send love and light to people, but where it's all based around justice, integrity, getting to the highest possible soul frequency, understanding that the other entities that we exist with, plants, animals, birds, insects, fish, are conscious. They have memory, they have experiences, they have personality. So we're not the owners of this planet. Also, the planet has her own soul frequency, and I believe is conscious. So that sort of understanding, that spiritual understanding that underpinned every ancient culture, and the living culture that we have in Australia, that is the oldest living culture, they understand all of these things. We're coming back to that. The satanic system, where it's very much the absolute skewed, inverted and uglified version of patriarchy, is falling away. The matriarchy is coming in. We've still got to be careful because females can be evil. They can be truly evil. I was abused by females as well. But this shift is energetically impossible to avoid. It comes with astrological alignments. It comes with the harmonisation of the ley lines, which is coming. It will be permanent in a few weeks in the December solstice of this year. The sun flares, all of these incredible things are all aligning at the same time for this to occur. We also have with humanity, and I've been noticing this since 2015, I read auras as part of my practice, a shift in soul frequency of all humans. So we're all coming up. So when people talk about the awakening, it's not just about Q drops. It's about an actual awakening. It's an actual frequency upgrade. So we are upgrading. Everything around us is upgrading. And the planet's upgrading. And you cannot have the dark entities that puppet humans on this earth in a power position in that new frequency. And this is the shift. This is the change. So that they're scrambling for other reasons. As a child, I was utilised in rituals because I was psychic for various reasons to communicate with dark entities, because the adults around me either were incapable of doing so or too scared, and children were just, an item that could be discarded and you get another one. Didn't matter if I was going to die. And even though I've shut down my clairaudient ability because of what I had to listen to in those rituals with these entities being called up, you can never shut it down completely. And I can hear a low level, and I've heard other satanic ritual abuse survivors tell me the same thing, a low level screeching as they are going down. I can hear it. They are going down. It's absolutely inevitable for them. What we've got to do is be very, very careful not to get lost in the division and all of the ridiculous stuff that's going on at the moment and attacking each other. So I'm very hopeful. I am so hopeful. We've got so much coming that's going to be amazing. A lot of people have prophesied it as a golden age. For me, seeing a lot of souls come in from 2015 with a golden soul frequency and people upgrading to that level. I read for one this morning. You know, this is the shift. The golden age, the return of the Christ consciousness. I don't believe it's Jesus Christ coming back as a physical person. I believe it's the shift of humanity coming up to this high frequency. But that's just my opinion, and I certainly don't want to squash anybody's religious beliefs. That's just my perspective.
Yeah. No, I agree. We actually, excuse me, we actually spoke about this recently, and I've not been raised religious. I've never been, but Isaac has. And, but he's kind of broken away from the religious programming. Like, he sees it for what it is within the religious context, but we both have a very strong faith in God and universe and all of that. And that's what we actually spoke about recently with the Christ consciousness. Like, I think the people that are very stuck in the religious paradigm believe that Jesus Christ, the man, is coming back to earth. And I've never believed that, but that's what I believe, is that it's that consciousness, that all the things that he did and he taught. And again, because even, you know, I still question whether, like, was he actually a man? Like, we don't actually know, just because I know how manipulated the Bible's been over the years. Like, I'm just I have a healthy amount of skepticism, but my mum always taught me to, not just with Christianity, but with all religions and spiritual teachings, is you take all of those stories and all of the allegories, and they're just lessons, you know, you take them as lessons. And that's what I believe. I think it's that this Christ consciousness is coming back. It's a consciousness. It's not the physical being coming back in physical form. And you can, I mean, I think it's at a point now for people that are tapped in, like, it's palpable. Like, you can feel the energy shifting, and you can feel, well, and you hear, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday with a lady that does esoteric astrology. And it was, such a great conversation they had. And she was talking about us moving into this golden age. And I'm hearing it a lot across all these different, you know, modalities and schools of thought. People are talking about it. And you can feel it. The cosmology is reflecting that. Like, there's all this stuff going on. And even actually, because I wanted to touch on this, and because you mentioned, like, with the soul frequencies being raised, like, even with sickness, like, we've been sick recently, and I never really understood the whole, oh, you're sick because you're upgrading. I never really understood that until maybe when I did the course, actually, your psychic development course, we touched on this, and how it's more of like, when your energy is upgrading, your body can no longer hold sort of the lower frequencies and toxins and things like that. So do you want to explain that a bit more? Because we've experienced that recently, where I was like, oh wow, I actually feel like this sick. Like, well, last time we had to cancel our previous booked interview because I got really unwell. But during that process, like, the way I felt after, I was like, I think I just got an upgrade, because it was like this, my body was detoxing, and then after I was unwell for a few days, I just felt different. So yeah, can you explain that phenomena?
Partly, I'd also say the timing is much better now for us to have this conversation, because a dear friend of mine, Annika Lucas, has just gone viral with a really important interview, which, you know, the guy was a bit of a dick, but anyway, she handled it beautifully. I was so impressed. So that has just brought it, like, it's just smashed people in the face with it. You know, these are mainstream people that are going to be watching this and thinking, wow, she really handled herself very well in a really awkward and difficult situation. So with the upgrades, so I noticed, so again, 21 years of working, you know, I've been reading, I was reading as a small child because I was used as a spy. But now I use my ability to help people to find their purpose in life. One of those aspects is reading the aura. And over that 21 years that I've been putting this into practice as an adult, I've noticed there's different amazing nuances with each person who has the same auric frequency. They'll have these really weird synchronicities. So, for instance, those who have a white soul frequency, usually, once they come into that the white soul frequency is learning how to manifest. Once you get past that level, you enter that Christ consciousness level, manifesting is easy. With that process comes this enormous detox. It's a bitch. You'll get skin conditions. You will not be able to drink alcohol anymore. It'll just make you so sick, or just affect you so intensely it's just not worth it. Wheat becomes intolerable. Now I'm talking about Australia, where we have a lot of GMOs and a lot of glyphosate, so it could be, but I read for a lot of people over the world and they have the same issue around that white soul frequency. Inability to tolerate things like lactose, sulfur, as in dried fruits and things, nitrates, smoked foods. So there's a sensitivity that comes on with this higher frequency. I had a soul upgrade a couple of years ago, and it was so weird. I knew that it wasn't just a sickness. And the reason that I knew it was so different, it took about 3 weeks, and I just upgraded to starting to teach my course, so it coincided with that, which was not fun. I would have a shower, be fine, didn't feel burnt at all. I'd get out and towel off my back, and it felt like my back had been severely burnt. It was so weird. The sensations were so strange. And as I was sort of going through that, I was listening to a psychic podcast or something at the time. And just as I was getting the download, you've just had an upgrade. This is not an illness. This is your DNA is online. Like this is a big shift and a big change. About 20 seconds after I had that download, the psychic said exactly the same thing. So the timing was very perfect for me to get that information, because I didn't understand it either. I used to think it was a bit of a fairy tale, and isn't that sweet? And they can believe that. I don't get it. Now I get it. So as you get to higher and higher frequencies, if you think about it, the higher frequency that you are on a soul level, the more your cells oscillate. So if you look at a piece of clear quartz, 36,728 oscillations per second, something along those lines. White soul frequency is that oscillation. A lot of people who get to that soul frequency are now obsessed with white quartz or clear quartz, and they want to go out and get out into nature where the quartz seams are, and they feel very attracted to areas where you've got gold mines, because gold grows between the quartz and the granite. So you've got this energetic trying to find your space, trying to align to that space. It does take a toll on the body. So again, if you suddenly come out with all these skin conditions for absolutely no reason, it can be partly the cortisol, because the body's going through this, the adrenals have to cope, the glandular system. We have a pineal gland that helps us to tune in to the Akashic and to all the other realms. But that gland is connected to the gallbladder. It's connected to every other gland in the body. And if they're not in alignment, if we're not taking out really good care of our bodies, we will get disruptions, particularly endocrine disruptions. It's pretty amazing. The benefit of going through these processes is that your understanding of the world, your understanding of everything shifts. You have a deeper level understanding where you can see the bullshit from a mile off. You can't the veil lifts. You just can't pretend to yourself anymore that these things aren't happening, which is liberating, scary, but liberating.
Yeah, we say that all the time. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's impossible. You can't. And yeah, I think that's, such an important point. And just again, for people to be more aware in their own bodies. And I actually love that you said that too, because you see a lot especially in New Age spirituality, people wanting to bypass the body and ascend from the body. But like what you said is such a perfect example of how it's actually about integrating. It's about integrating mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit, so that it is all cohesive and working together. You can't have one without the other. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap of wanting to ascend the body and kind of disconnect from it. And I don't think that's the way forward. I think it's about actually more coming into and being a whole being with all of those different elements.
What you're describing there is dissociation. This is what happens when people are severely traumatized. They want to get out of their body. So no, it's not healthy. You can ascend on a soul level and not have a human experience or not have a physical, incarnation. You don't have to go to a world and have a physical incarnation. And by the way, the plants, the trees, the animals around us can be a much higher soul frequency than the humans. Humans, a lot of souls don't want to have a human experience because it can be so corrupting because of money and mind control and all of these things that don't exist in the other aspects of the natural world. so souls can ascend on the other side. It's not as quick. This is a fast lesson. We come to these planets, and there are many planets near suns that are habitable. So, the belief system that just the one planet with life on it is ridiculous. Just in the Milky Way galaxy alone, there's like 20 billion stars with planets that are habitable around it. So, I mean, seriously, can we really just get away from that? We're the only planet. And why would people want us to believe that? Unless there were others visiting and they just don't want us to know. And this is military level, keeping things quiet. So we can ascend on the other side, but it's much, much more successful and quicker to come into a third dimensional planet and have a physical experience to do it. So that's why we're here. That's why we do it. And there are billions upon billions upon billions of souls that want to be here right now. We're just the lucky ones that did the work to be able to stick around so that we can have this experience now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One of the things that comes up a lot in different discussions about like your soul coming here and incarnating, and then they have the side that says it's a trap. It's a loose trap. It's a prison planet. You're basically just here, and the Gnostic teachings about the demiurge and all that. And I see that because I don't know it extremely well, but I see it a lot pop up in movies. There's thematic elements of that like to be repeated into these movies that most people watching won't really understand that that's where that story comes from. Is that accurate, or is there another gambit being run with that to trick people into thinking that they're in a prison and so they behave like it?
Well, it's quite terrifying, isn't it? How completely and utterly demoralizing is that? You can't get off, and you're going to have incarnation after incarnation after incarnation. In my opinion, it's a choice. But what I do see, and what I've understood from a very early age, and I don't believe this is programmed into me, from my memories, because I was under the MK Ultra program for psychic training from a toddler. And the way that they reacted to me as a child, it could have been part of the program, but they were always quite impressed at what I could bring up. Now, again, they do that under programming, but usually they're cruel. So we come in, if we're going to have as a soul, have a human experience, we usually come in at the color frequency of the navel or heart chakra, the yellow or green soul frequency. And depending on our choices, if we are altruistic, we will ascend upwards towards the violet level, which is the chakra, crown chakra. And once we get to that point, we are at a graduate level. If we're selfish, we'll devolve and go down to a base chakra soul frequency. So when I see people's auras, I see their soul frequency. I rarely see the chakra colors come up. It does happen, but mostly it's the soul frequency of that soul. So I know if they're selfish or if they're altruistic. And interestingly, with the darker souls, the aura is very close to the body. With light souls, it's very wide. So that, I believe, is a process you can't really get off planet until you've got to either end of that graduate system. But I believe it's a choice. I think we choose to come in to have these lessons and choose which direction to go in. So from that point, from the violet or the red level, there's a choice to stick around. A lot of souls will come back in. A lot of dark souls don't want to leave. They don't want to go where they belong. They've usually, if they've got to the psychopathic red level, they're not going to have opportunities to fix that. It's very hard for them. And a lot of them are terrified of ascension. They do not want to be a light soul. So they'll jump on people. They will try and have it in. They won't come in for a full-on incarnation. They'll just jump on somebody else's body and push the soul aside. And this is where we get this puppeted behavior that we see with politicians and all of these people that do these evil things, but not necessarily evil people.
Yeah.
They're really strong, powerful mind control.
Do these people sometimes, does their physical appearance change based off of what's inhabiting them?
So if you look at people who've gone through the MK Ultra program or any kind of dissociative trauma, can split off personality, and you can have a child alter. It's like, so you have all these alter parts. My father was a prime example. When he was in his befuddled, sort of didn't really remember what he was doing, trying to have a normal life, forgot that he just murdered somebody state, he looked different to when he was evil Max. And we have a photograph. My siblings and I found this photograph of him with the evil Max alter. It's very clear. It's pure psychopath. They look different. So MK Ultra people that I know that when they're in a certain altar part, they'll have a different facial expression. There's different ways that they hold their body and carry their body, and of course the personality and the way they speak. If someone's in a child altar, they'll speak in a very childlike state. So yes, absolutely. When someone's being puppeted, it's the same as if they've got a split off altar. And a lot of the splitting that is done intentionally to create these altar parts through dissociation and trauma is so they can attach an entity. So the MO that I mentioned before with the family murders, with these horrific things that were done to the back ends of these poor young men and boys, that was done to me. And it's actually it's a well-known fact now that that's a specific thing for Adelaide. It's the MO for Adelaide. That is to introduce an entity. So under Freemasonry, they believe that they need to sodomize or brutalize a child from the back end before the age of 3. For me, I was 2.5. Before the age of 3, to attach something through trauma. Yeah, it's just horrific. That's a very well-known Freemasonic tenet. That's what they do.
Wow.
Yeah, and is that done at just the high levels, or is this like throughout the whole of Freemonic they understand that this is going on? Or
well, I know my father did it to another of my siblings. We're from the Kennedy bloodline. The McIntyres are considered, that's my maiden name, are considered powerful. He certainly had impunity from prosecution. He had a lot of blackmail material on people, but it's also the bloodline. I mean, the carrying on with my family about the family name, and there's another family name that his sibling married into, and that person, her son ended up being head of the political party in my state. So there's a lot of carrying on about that. So it could be. I wasn't initiated into a high level of Freemasonry from my understanding or memory. My paternal grandmother was apparently the head of the Eastern Star sect. They won't give me any information about it, but that's what I've been told. This is a family rumour. Her father was the Grand President of the Grand Lodge, very high up Freemason. So I believe perhaps this is something that's used for high up Freemasons might do this to their children. It might not be something that all Freemasons do. And as with anything, you will get some good people in the Freemasonic order, and you'll get some evil people. The higher level that they get, that obviously the more evil they become. The lower level ones are there to make everybody think that they're nice. They're the ones that work for Rotary, and they're the ones that go out and interface with people. But seriously, you've got an order where the only position that women have with the Freemasons is to provide them with their meals. I mean, that's an enslavement in itself. And how people can think that's okay, I don't know. It's so strange.
Excuse me. Well, I think, that's why I think it's, for us, I feel it's such an important conversation to have, because, for people that might be listening or watching this and kind of thinking, oh, well, why do I need to know all these, all this stuff that goes on? I think it's, again, it's always a fine line. You say this a lot in the truther community, where people kind of get stuck in the really dark stuff and the really negative stuff. But it's about having the awareness, because I think you kind of need to know, especially with this shift that's happening, is that you do need to have an understanding, I believe, of how the world's been run, how it's been set up, the things that have gone on, so then we can see what needs to change, really what needs to change. And I think that's what I love so much about the Lay Love Down project, which we didn't mention in the intro, but and you can explain exactly what that's about. But really, it's essentially getting people to go out and put positive frequencies into the ley lines, because what they've done, which I learned from you, is that what they've been doing for, hundreds, thousands of years is on, the solstices and the equinox and these really pivotal energetic times, is going and putting negative energies into that. So I think it is really important to be aware of this stuff, and also to know, like, the things like demonic attachments and entity attachments, just having an understanding. I think some people, and I've actually experienced this with a practitioner that I was seeing that works with, she was like communicating with my guides and doing all this stuff. But when I brought up something about potentially having an attachment, she just shut it down straight away and said, that's not, we have more power than them, and which is true, but she kind of dismissed it. And I think again, to me, that feels it's a bit new age spirituality where they kind of just, everything's love and light and they refuse to look at the dark or the, you know, the shadow side. And so I think that's also really important because, yeah, my understanding now of what mental illness is in terms of like demonic attachment. So I've touched on a few things there, but you go into whatever you want to around that because, yeah, I mean, I learn a lot of this stuff from you. So, yeah, I think it's really important for people to know.
It is. And so, again, you know, I feel like a harbinger of doom a lot of the time. When I first came out with my first interview where I showed my face, I'd been speaking out for a long time beforehand, 12 years. But in 2018, I did an interview where I showed my face. I put my name out there and I described all of the things many of the things that I'd experienced as a child. When people contact me, they say, oh, you were the first person to wake me up, or, you know, I didn't realize these things happened until I saw you on this interview or whatever. And I feel sorry for them because I know that awakening is so painful. However, it is so important because what happens is when you have a population that's dumbed down, when you fill them full of fluoride and glyphosates and all of these different products that make them so sick and shut down and calcify the pineal gland, which is our antenna to pick up on all of this esoteric information, we have crystals, calcite crystals in the pineal gland that pick up frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies. There are so many more senses with the physical body that people don't understand. It's soul senses as well. There are many more than 5 senses, so many more. So part of the reason why I still talk about these things, as much as I now believe we are in the clean-up education and healing phase, the more people that understand this critical mass coming out of the mind control will create this ripple effect. And this shift will be impossible to stop. And we've already got there. We're well and truly past that critical mass point. I believe it's probably around 40-50% of people now realise what's going on, whereas before it was a lot less. This means that it's impossible now for those that puppeted people to stick around. It's not worth it. We can't be put back to sleep. And if they wanted to kill us all, the structural damage, the things that they would have to do, it wouldn't work. With the jabs, everything that they've done there, it's not as lethal as they thought. All of the animals that they tested these jabs on were in despondent situations. They had no reason to live. They were miserable. We have reason to live. We've got love. We've got nature. We've got all of these things that they're trying to desperately take away from us, but it hasn't worked. So we're well and truly out of that fear aspect. So what we have now is the cleanup, the clearing, people activating, people stepping up and saying, okay, I'm not going to work for the man anymore. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to do what I came here to do. I feel this calling to do something really important and special. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it. And I'm seeing that in droves. It's just amazing. It just blows my mind. It's so exciting. So we are not, certainly not stuck on Prison Planet. Right. In fact, I had a download a couple of years ago that process of even having to graduate has been released. So much has changed. I read a book and I published it in 2017. It's almost completely obsolete now because of so many shifts and changes. So the veil has gone. The veil that stopped people from realizing that we live in a multidimensional universe with all these otherworldly entities and that plants and the animals around us are all conscious and highly intelligent. That shift has occurred. So the veil has gone. We're coming up to permanent harmony time, which means that these entities that puppet can't exist on the surface. They'll have to go underground or off planet. We are coming to a time where I believe we'll get to a more temperate climate on the earth as well, everywhere. I think that the poles, there's something not quite right with that. I'm not a geologist, so I don't want to go too much into it, but I don't think that's normal. And I think it's the ice caps are there to protect and hide what's happening in the Antarctic and the Arctic regions for various reasons. This is going to be massive. So I really want people to recognise that it might be dark to hear these sorts of stories. And I've got a lot of dear friends who do this work as well. And it's very re-traumatizing. Every time one of us has to talk about this stuff again, rest assured, we are traumatized by it. It's full on. But it's worth it because it's waking people up. If they recognize that it's happening, they're hearing multiple people talking about it. The 50 Voices of Ritual Abuse website is a fantastic website to go to because there are people on that website, and there's more than 50, that are talking about this sort of abuse, what they went through. It's all very similar from all different parts of the globe. all over the planet. This is happening. This is not just one crazy person here and one crazy person there. It's happening everywhere. And if you look at, you know, the levels of what happens, the mind control in the military in so many different pockets and enclaves, even to the point of the way that doctors have been revered in the preparation for this time so that people would listen to their doctor instead of listening to their gut. I mean, all these doctors are going to be obsolete soon. No one's going to listen to Western medical medicine. They're not going to pay any attention. So that's a huge shift in itself. I'm glad I stuck around, because obviously I had suicide programming and there were a lot of opportunities as a child with near-death experiences where I could have left, but I kept coming back because I was convinced by higher self and loving spirit guides that it was worth it and there was something amazing that was going to happen at this point. And I knew I had to get to the age of 50. I'm 51 now, where it was going to shift, and that's when it's happening. So I'm so glad I'm here. I am so glad I'm here. I don't have any fear about the future at all. And that's coming from someone who's got, you know, severe PTSD, and I don't have very, very few of those symptoms anymore.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, there's so many important things that you touched on and we're discussing, and I think coming from my background in sort of evangelical Christian teachings, I was always more curious about, like, kind of where we ended up here with the show, Natural AF. What really is this place? Who are we really? What is going on? How can I think of someone and then they call me? You know, and my dad's had experiences like that where he was in, I think, Panama or Vietnam, probably both, and he thought of a really good friend of his that entered the Air Force around the same time, and he thinks about him, hasn't seen him for like 3 or 4 years, turns around and there he is walking into the shop. You know, these connections exist. There's something real that, like you said, there's many more than 5 senses, and that world is intentionally hidden from us. And I think it's really important for people in the Christian religion to learn to let go a little bit of what they think they know, not let go of their beliefs. You don't have to let go of the whole thing, but just understand that there's more than what you're told. And some of it might be intentionally kept, or some of it might just be not shown to you because whoever's teaching you doesn't know. But it's so freeing to be able to experience the world in these different ways. There's so much more possibility. I think there's much more connection to God and our Creator through that, when you recognize that, his, like, this bush turkey that's up here scratching around. My old life, I would have, like, gone after him and tried to shoot him or do something, like, get out of here, like, just very confrontational with nature. You know, oh, you're messing up my garden bed. Now I'm just like, I've got strawberries growing back there, and I'm like, let him eat as much as he wants. Like, he's doing something important.
Yes.
Something in the spirit has led him to make a nest, like right up here on the hill by us. And I feel that's very special. And things like that just fill me with joy and peace. And that's one of the reasons why I know that I'm not being led down a dark path by, you know, esoteric occultist people that are tricking me into Luciferianism. Because that was another thing with the Christian side of the awakening and the truther world. It's like anyone who talks about reincarnation, like, it's all Luciferianism. It's all made to look nice, but it's actually this evil, dark power. And I'm like, that's them living in fear and experiencing kind of a shutdown state that I think, that's another choice. So,
and it's understandable, because it's a form of indoctrination. I think that religions have their part, because they bring community. I mean, what's the most beautiful part about Christianity? People coming together and helping each other. That's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, because of the desire to control and social, you know, top-down control from people who want to have power, it's just been infiltrated, which is really sad in many of them. It's interesting because, I talk about reincarnation a lot, because I believe we go through these really long cycles of reincarnating. We don't have to do it anymore because we're all graduating, but, you know, that this process goes on for a long time. And the proof is children that are born who say, I lived in France, and then you take them there and they know where they are, and they'll show you all these different places they've been to. How is that possible if they haven't had that past life?
Exactly.
So, you know, I've talked about this before, and I've been told, you know, under hushed tones, you know, what about the principalities? And you can't talk about that, and you can't talk about your guides because of this reason. And I find it, at times I get frustrated and I find it insulting, because I'm told to be careful by people who've never had the sorts of experiences that I've had. I've communed with demons. I know what they sound like. I've had to talk to them to interpret for them, for the idiots who conjured them up. And this is someone who's getting something from a book, who's telling me what demons do. I mean, I find that insulting and infuriating, but I also know that these people mean well. They want to protect. Yes. They're loving and kind. They've got a big heart. It's very hard. It's there's a dichotomy there of trying to soothe them when I'm dealing with my own stuff.
Absolutely.
That turkey is most likely building his nest. If he's building a nest on your property, it's probably a crossing of ley lines. I would really look there, Alexa. There'd be something special there.
There is.
Yeah. Well, we've been doing workshops on our property. A dear friend of ours who I actually really want to connect you guys, because she, is very tapped in. She's had a lot of really wild experiences in the spirit world, and she knows all about ley lines and portals and all that stuff. And again, this is when you start hearing the same, school of thought around things from different people. That's when, to me, that resonates as truth. Like she shares all the same information as you. She didn't know about you until recently. And it's just like, well, that to me resonates as truth. Like it has to be. And then again, when you have the experiences of actually going and feeling them. And so, we've been doing workshops on our property. We've done 2 now. And because she's teaching people how to locate them and being able to tap into their own innate gifts, because everyone's different. Some people feel them, like you've said, some people see them, some people, can like hear things, whatever, they can feel their body change. So it's just about getting people actually in and experiencing, and we've got a lot going on our property. And it's been really beautiful. Like we actually did a healing in one area, which was actually really interesting. So we've got this tree. To me, he's the grandfather tree on our property. He's got a face, which actually I think I shared it in the group when I was doing the course, and I've always seen his face. And the first time I was called out to really drawn into the forest and to where he is was after my dog died. And it was probably the hardest loss at that point in time that I've ever experienced. And he died in my arms, and he was, he was like my baby. Like it was devastating. And I think the day after he died, we buried him on the property. And I was really sad, and I just felt very drawn to walk into our forest. And I remember crying, and I just remember asking the forest to take my pain away, because I was just so sad. And then I just found myself at the tree. And then I'm a tree hugger, guys. I hugged the tree and I just felt so comforted by him, by this strong, because I get a very masculine sense, and it just felt very comforting. And anyway, so fast forward a year and a half later, when our friend came out and just first got a feel for the property before we organized the workshops, she actually stopped and she said, "Oh, I can feel," and because she kind of steps in and steps out to just make sure that she's definitely feeling something. And she felt like a choking, and she said, "I'm pretty sure there's been a death here, like at this tree." And this probably from very long time ago. Anyway, so she said, let's see, when we do the workshop, let's see who else got it. Anyway, we had about 4 or 5 people in the group, about a group of 20, that felt the same thing. They either felt short of breath, or like a choking sensation, or a very dark, dense energy there. So we all went out after and actually did a healing. And a month later, we had a second workshop, and I actually hadn't been out there since. And the day that everyone was here, I walked through that area, and both Mum and I, it felt so different. The air in that part, like in front of it, because I'm pretty sure I feel there's a portal in front of that tree as well. There's a clearing of we're pretty sure. So the path going through the forest is a ley line, nothing grows there. And then in front of this tree, there's a wider spot where nothing really grows. And I'm pretty sure that's a portal. And we just walked through it, and it felt so different. It was lighter. The air changed a little bit there. It was quite a warm day, but through that it was really cool and beautiful, and it just felt so different. And I found it really interesting that even without knowing, and because again, with ley lines, you tend to be drawn to them naturally anyway, but just the energy that was there, the fact that I was first drawn out there after a death, and a death had occurred there at some point in time, it was just very, very interesting. So
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to know this stuff because yeah, like that, like we always notice. I watched for the first time ever goannas mating in front of like right in front of our house here because we're literally like a little cabin in the woods here. And it's very interesting to take notice of these things instead of, like Isaac said, and I think a lot of people, especially in the cities and stuff, they're shooing animals away and they don't want them near the house and all this stuff. And it's like if you actually just sit and notice and connect to it, I think it does, for me anyway, it's like this enhancing of your connection to God. I think that's first and foremost. I think for people that this is very new to, I think connecting with nature is one of the quickest and I feel easiest ways that you can connect with God. It's just
absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no animal that crosses your path, no bird that interacts with you that isn't a messenger or an emissary for something. So the goannas, that could be symbolic of something very powerful. With the portal that you felt drawn to, your dog's soul would have gone straight to that portal. It's the closest place that it would have gone to move over into the other side. So these portal spaces or vortexes, as geobiologists like to call them and other ley hunters, are where ley lines cross. And so they are a interdimensional portal space where all the other doors to all the other dimensions come off. This is why rituals of unalivings occur in these spaces, because they are so powerful. All the other dimensions are there. You can call something in and open that doorway with the unaliving of somebody very effectively. I watched this happen. What you've done there with that shift and that energetic change is so profound, and it's so profound for that tree who has been doing its own work in all of that time that it's been there trying to ameliorate that damage. So nature is trying to create this balance as well. It's trying very, very hard. But as the co-creators on this planet that are the most active with co-creation, and because we're the most destructive, we have to be engaged with nature to do this work too. And this is why Lay Love Down is something that I am so passionate about. My passion is not speaking about my childhood, I can tell you. It's about working with nature. It's about teaching people how to open up these senses. It's about helping to make people recognize and remember how significant interaction with nature is. You're so lucky to have a property like that, and there's no mistake in that. You were meant to be there so that you could do the work that you're doing now. I feel your turkey's doing some really important work. It sounds ridiculous, but that turkey's working for you.
Yeah.
That's definitely working for you. So with the ley line frequencies, because we're coming into this powerful harmony time, the harmony time for the ley lines used to only ever occur on the solstices and equinoxes. There's an amazing gentleman called Rory Duff that I learnt this from, who sadly is in intensive care at the moment. I hope he's okay, but he's been very unwell. He prophesied that we would come into this permanent harmony time of the ley lines. So normally with the ley lines, they would harmonise for hours or days at a time around the solstices and equinoxes. So we're talking December 21st, March 21st, June 21st and 22nd, and September. So 21st, 22nd of all of those months. That's been drawing out longer and longer and longer either side of those equinoxes and solstices, to the point now where we're coming into it, it's going to be permanent. That harmony time is going to be all year round. It's called harmony time for a reason. It's just uncanny, I feel, that Rory's in this position at the moment, and I hope he's still with us, because it's, if you looked at it, the work that he's done with major, group meditations, he's been working on this for a very long time. With Lay Love Down, we're doing something very similar. We are grouping people together of like mind, who love nature, who love going out and finding ley lines, who either can see them or feel them or dowse for them. And we're encouraging people to get out there and express joy in those spaces, however that joy might be, as long as it doesn't harm anybody. So, don't go out and damage the trees because you find that fun. That's not the case.
Right.
Go out and produce beautiful music, dance, show love for the trees and plants, hug a tree. Anything that makes you feel joy in that space helps to balance the ley lines. It's not about changing the frequency, according to Trevor Wee, a beautiful man who contributes to Lay Love Down. It's about balancing. He understands this from the original Australians' point of view. The ley lines are song lines. They are the repository for akashic information. So those of us whose pineal glands are not occluded with fluoride and poisons can feel the shift that comes in, and we can actually pick up more information from there. So the Akashic, for those who are not aware of it, is a repository, like a database, a bit like everything that happens on Earth goes up into a cloud, all events, actions, thoughts, sequences, everything that occurs past, present, and future. So if you want to know what's coming for you, if you get out into a ley line, you can pick it up much more easily. If you go out into a ley line and meditate and ask for your inner self to give you guidance, or your guides, or God, or whoever, you will get a much clearer transmission of information. The calcite quartz in our pineal glands works very much like the transmitter antennas that pick up radio waves, pick up, television waves, all of that information that's out there, Wi-Fi. It's a very similar system. It's just physical body. I often kind of have a bit of a giggle that we've got things like the internet, because we don't need it. It's just, ancient peoples knew so much more than we know. We just think that we need to be wired in or to have Wi-Fi or something to be able to pick this information up. We've got it in spades. But, obviously the darker elements of this planet wanted us to not have that ability, because then we won't pay for the money to look at it on the internet, and that's their censored version. Just so people know, and I say this in every interview that I do now, the Nazis were feeding the concentration camp victims fluoride, and they obviously weren't concerned about their teeth. So you've got to think about, why would that be? It's to dumb the population down, to stop them from having their psychic ability, and just to see, does it work? Does it keep them subservient? And sadly, in a lot of cases, it did.
Yeah. And then, it's come out in decades recently, but the Nazis came over under Operation Paperclip. A lot of them came to the U.S. Some of them went to Russia, and founded NASA, the CIA, like the OSS and all that. And I don't know how to go into this next. It's not really a question, but I guess it's a comment just about thinking about all these things, like the CIA, the ASIO, and how despicable some of these elements within these groups act, and how dark it is. There's a part of me that's just like, in the States I own guns, and I'm just like, let's go take them out. Let's just make, like, I know a little bit about how to plan an ambush and a raid. Like, I know how to, but I'm like, I don't feel like that's the way. I don't feel like that's how we win, because that's their world. That's the world that they flourish in, is death and destruction and violence and all that. So how do we win? And maybe you already mentioned the Lay Love Down project, but like, how does that help? Or does that just a bunch of hippies in the woods, like, putting flowers in the hair? Like, what does it actually do? And what else can we do to win?
If that's their way of expressing their joy, then that's important.
Okay.
They're going to get out there with the flowery dress and put the flowers in their hair. But
good.
So what it does, so basically, if you want to understand how significant and important it is to express joy and loving expressions within the ley lines, you have to look at why the Satanists will go out and do an open air ritual and kill somebody, and it's a very noisy thing to do. And they would have to have everybody stitched up in the area to make sure that nobody in any kind of judicial situation or police, nobody will actually take those allegations, if it's heard and seen, seriously. Now, why would they take that risk? Why not just do it underground? There's plenty of tunnels to do it underground. They do it in the open air spaces because that's where the ley lines cross, and that's where they've got the portal spaces. It's also really important for them to do it out in nature. So otherworldly entities also find it somewhat difficult to come into spaces where there's a lot of different electromagnetic frequencies. They do it in these areas for a reason, because it's so significant to them. So it makes perfect sense, if you invert that, how significant and important it is for us to do the absolute opposite. It will undo what they've done. We don't need to be physically aggressive in this situation. I don't think. This is a very different kind of war. It's an energetic war, and I really do believe that. I'm not ascribing to any political persuasion. It is literally, it's energetic. So if you look at the first three dimensions, everything that exists in the third dimension starts in the first dimension as thought. Starts as a thought, and then we start to plan about how we're going to bring that into place, just like if you're making a painting. You think about this image that you want to paint, then you get all your materials together, and then you physically do it, and it becomes a painting. It becomes a thing in the third dimension. if we can all, those of us that are awake, imagine this world that we want to live in, that doesn't have government overreach, that doesn't have a UN, and it's not about globalism, that where we have our own sovereignty, we have won immediately. And I think we're already at that critical point. We've been at that critical point for a while. This is why everything's going so crazy. We've got a bunch of really messed up, traumatized, puppeted individuals who were probably born into satanic family lines like myself. Like I said, one of my family members was a very high up politician in my state, that just go through the motions because they don't know what else to do, and they're still going through the motions. I think a lot of them realise that it's pointless, and we're going to see a lot of suicides. We're going to see a lot of people getting taken out by their own. I personally don't think we have to go out and get violent. This shift is already happening. Like I said before, as we come into this higher frequency at the end of this year, as we come into this harmony time, these entities that have been puppeting people will not be able to exist here. And we're going to see a lot of them, like, you hear the Zuckerbergs of the world are building these, underground bunkers. There's a reason for that.
Right.
So it's inevitable that this shift will occur. I get a lot of flack for that. Oh, you're saying that everything's going to be wonderful and everything's all fixed and we don't have to fight. For those who feel that intense need to fight physically, I'm not stopping you. Do whatever you feel is right. I don't want to be the one that says don't do it if it needs to be done. And I can understand that because I had military training as a child. I was a psychic. I was a tool as a child, and there are things that I did that I'm really not proud of. I have that part of me that wants to go out and get the people that hurt me, that I know hurt other people in my family that I adore and love and who are so traumatized that they can't even function. I want to do that too. And I could have done it because my father gave me a rifle when I was 13. I could have taken him out. Would have been so easy. But I didn't, because it wasn't the right thing to do. On a soul level, I would have taken myself down. And I didn't go through all those different lifetimes to get to the point where I could do this just to put myself into a mental institution for the rest of my life or go into jail. I would have been pointless. So think about, I think for those that do have that, I've got to go out and I've got to sort this out, think about the repercussions as well for you on a soul level.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, actually, we often now, once you see things, you can't unsee it, and we can't watch movies anymore because we just sit and pick it apart. But it's interesting. I actually find it interesting because even when I was younger, before I was, awake to the truth of the world, I used to actually love watching movies and doing, like, when I was at school, like film study was one of my fortes. And now watching it, it's really interesting because you pick up on the programming, and you often see it, especially in very masculine, like action drama movies. Like, there is this like revenge programming where I think that's what people, and you saw it a lot in the last, 4 years or so with COVID and people getting really angry and like this wanting to fight. And it was always about, actually, and I was listening, the podcast I was listening to yesterday, they were talking about with this esoteric astrologer, and it was on Alex Zek's podcast, and they were talking about how if you're wanting to fight against something, that's a clear sign that you kind of it's the wrong direction, because whatever you're fighting against, you're still giving that thing energy, whatever it is, whether it's the government, whether it's like these Freemasons, whatever it is. And that's the key. The key is to go within, really, to go within and then start working on yourself on an individual level. Like, that's the only way we move forward too, is that we make the changes. Like we what's that saying? It's really cliche, but it's so true. Like, be the change you want to see in the world. That's the only way we change things. And I think there is definitely this programming where they need to fight against the thing that they don't like, and they still have to, even though they don't want a particular system, they feel that they've got to fight against it to change it. And it's actually not, it's actually just moving away from it, and naturally, and we're seeing it, like naturally it will crumble, it will just dismantle on its own. And I think we are starting to see that. Like, it's actually been really, really beautiful to watch. Actually, I was just thinking the other day that a lot of the last few political things that have happened, so there was the vote, this was last year, but the vote to I can't remember exactly. It was to do with the original people and we had to vote yes or no, but it was all a bit of a trap. But the majority, we voted no. So that was over a year ago now. And then recently with they've brought in the bill to, where under 16s have to, and that's to log, they have to show their ID to get online. Oh, sorry, 16 and over, and under 16s can't go on social media. And they've passed that bill, but the one before that,
information,
and that we got, and I was actually thinking, and I was like, wow, there's quite a lot now where it's just not happening. Like, it's just not, and yes, it takes the people, like I signed a petition for the mis and disinformation bill. So yes, we have to do certain things, but I think the less we fight and the more we just kind of make a stand in the way we live and the things, I think we're seeing a lot of people leaving the system in terms of just leaving their jobs and going, like you said, and doing their own thing. That sends a bigger message, I believe, than, fighting and protesting and going to rallies and all of that stuff. I think that has a much bigger impact. But I do also believe that there is a bit of programming where people believe that that's the stuff they've got to do to make a change.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's this, you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't, which is not something I would normally say, but it's very interesting. I did share the fight against the misinformation, disinformation bill, because it's about that collective consciousness again. If we're all thinking we don't want this, it won't happen. With the under 16 social media ban, that originated in South Australia, that idea. The Premier is absolutely all over that. He's just like, oh, this happened, this started here, and he's so proud of it. And he begged Albanese to make this happen. That will definitely not come into place. That is not going to happen. It's got another year to play out. They're already sending out. I was sent. Someone sent me his letter, the Premier's letter about this all started with me and rah rah rah. That's going to fall apart. There'll probably be an election, an Australia-wide election between now and then. That'll be one of the main things that people will vote for. And I know that it's not necessarily elections, it's elections, but there's also been a shift in that way. So that also will not work for them anymore, for whatever reason. One thing, I know that there's all of this, savior programming, and we believe that, someone's going to come off planet and come and save us. And that, a lot of religions unfortunately play into that. I don't believe that, but I have worked with a group of spirit guides since I was a small child who showed themselves to me on many occasions when I was in absolute desperation, not to mention these near-death experiences that I had. I know that there are assistants on the other side, whether it's just that they give us the wherewithal to keep going when we're at absolute, lowest ebb, or whether or not energetically they're adding a frequency. I believe it's like a frequency change also. So they may be part of the reason why we're coming up to this permanent harmony time, because we have an energetic frequency that's coming in. And again, everything is frequency, everything is energy. So that is a possibility, and it's quite funny. When people used to talk about, us coming into the fifth dimension, I thought it was a fairy tale. And I wasn't embarrassed for them, but I just thought, that's that love and light stuff that I just don't get. But when Rory Duff spoke about permanent harmony time, and me knowing that the ley lines are a repository for the Akashic, and many of these ley lines follow quartz seams as well, and quartz is also a repository for the Akashic, just like there's a piece of quartz in every watch, every phone, every computer, quartz in our pineal gland. I knew when he said that permanent harmony time was literally us coming into the fifth dimension. So when you look at it from that perspective, again, this is inevitable. I believe that we are getting some sort of assistance, but I'm not saying we rely on that. We are coming into this incredible shift. We're only weeks away from it, weeks away. And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect afterwards either. There's still going to be upheaval. We've still got a bunch of toddlers in powerful places that are going to have big tantrums. But I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah. The frequency thing is so interesting because it does carry this weight of this, whether it's real or not, as far as the new age, New Age, I believe, just kind of co-opts a lot of things that are true. Yeah. And then there's some distortions that happen. And I know friends of mine in the military that were special forces communications, where they do radios and stuff like that. Yeah. And I was just thinking about something I'd heard from, because I never went through the communications training. I was on the medic side.
Right.
But the communications guys would talk about some of this wizardry stuff that they would do. I was like, this sounds like some really cool shit. And of course, the special forces would have some really interesting secret stuff. But they would use trees. They'd find big trees and they would turn the tree into an antenna.
Yep.
And then what you were saying about the quartz, we were listening recently to somebody explain their views on some of these mountain ranges possibly being live things that fossilize, like trees that became mountains. And the quartz is like the tree sap in those trees. And just that connection of the tree antenna, the frequency of the quartz, and the fact that we have that in our brain, the pineal gland connected to the symbolism of the pine cone. These things are fascinating to dig into. And I believe it's like, yeah, it's just the way that we're created by our God and as a part of nature, not separate, but we're like a reflection of what's around us in a way.
Mm. When you look at the way that warfare is conducted across the planet, most countries engage in some sort of wizardry because everybody else is doing it, so they have to. And this is part of the reason why I push back against those in the religious circles who say, you can't touch this, it's dangerous, principalities, rah, rah, rah. Well, the demonic, the satanic, they use all of those things. And if we don't hone our gifts and abilities to fight back, we're just sitting ducks. I mean, it's like child's play for them. Mm. It's part of what our existence here. We have a pineal gland with quartz in it for a reason. I know a Christian who thinks a pineal gland is evil. It's so sad. It's so sad. We can't hide from these things because it's just how reality works. What we can do is do it ethically and do it in a way that protects people, protects children, most importantly, protects children. Yeah. You know, most children are born psychically, totally open. They'll remember past lives. Up until about the age of 5, they'll have imaginary friends. They'll see things under the bed that are terrifying. They'll have all of these experiences. And the people around them, usually through whatever indoctrination they've gone through or because they've lost their ability to pick up on those things, will make those children feel crazy or tell them they can't tell other people because they'll be looked at as if they're crazy. I do see a time where that is not happening anymore. And I also know that the veil having lifted as it has, these children that are being born now will never have that. They'll never have the veil descend so that that's occluded. And we're getting to the point now where, you know, they're talking about taking the fluoride out of the water in America. Now, if that happens, it's impossible then for the other countries like Australia, New Zealand, and all those other countries to keep doing it. It's a neurotoxin. They can't keep doing it anymore. So that's going to be a massive shift.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we've got all of these nature spirits that are coming online and showing themselves everywhere, not just in the ley lines. So, you know, people need to know, you mentioned Jerry Marzinski earlier before off camera. People need to know it is not crazy to see humanoid apparitions in the clouds, in the trees, in reflections in water. That is what original peoples have talked about for millennia. And this is part of culture. Aren't we supposed to listen to culture of original people? Isn't that what we've just gone through the last 4 years? You must listen to the original people, otherwise you're a Nazi or whatever. You know, we've got to listen to these people, and nature spirits are extremely intrinsic. It's not just paganistic. It's extremely intrinsic to every natural culture on this planet.
And that's really what this time is about. It's I think Alex X said this when he talks about this quite a lot. And you hear it a lot now with lots of, you know, public figures and speakers in our space, is that it's a remembering of who we are. It's not about learning new things. I mean, there's an element of that because we kind of have to, I think, learn to get out of this old way of thinking. But I think it's a remembering of who we truly are and the gifts that we innately possess, that we were born with. And like you said, that have been so conditioned out of us. And I think I've lost my train of thought now, but I also did want to get into, because you did mention protection and with children and things, and I know that's part of your daily practice, and especially, you know, during the course you would do it before each call. So could you touch a little more into like the importance of like energetic protection, especially when you're doing, you know, whether it's you're going out to the ley lines or you're doing energetic or spiritual work, just because you are kind of opening yourself up. So yeah, just maybe talk a bit more on how to protect yourself and the importance of it.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, the way that we grow up in the Western world, we're not reminded that we are a soul having a human experience, and the soul actually, the body is surrounded by the soul. That is the aura, and the soul interacts with the body through the chakras and meridians. So it's almost like a puppetry, and this is why attachments can come in. They can come into your auric system and then take over. Now, I'm not trying to frighten people, because it's very easy to protect yourself, and all you need is beautiful high-level frequencies and no consent. You just say that, no, you can't do it to me. I've spoken publicly about this a few times before, and I'll do it again, even though, you know, for some people it would sound so woo-woo and out of there. But if you've got something, say you pick up on something in the peripheral vision, there are different rods and cones in the outer part of the retina that pick up on ultraviolet and infrared. And this is a known fact. So the darker entities, those that want to parasite off people energetically or puppet, appear in the infrared. They come up as shadow, grey. You can usually only see them out of the corners of your eyes unless you're a very, very powerful psychic. When you see that out of the corner of your eye, if you get that feeling over your body about cold chills and you feel really uncomfortable, not the lovely one that you get from your crown chakra all the way down, that means that something's correct and you've got the right information. I'm talking about that chilling, cortisol releasing, horrible feeling. All you have to do is imagine that whatever that entity is, and you imagine it in your imagination what it might look like. You imagine it pixelating into gold dust. It sounds so ridiculously easy, but oh my God, is it powerful and is it effective? I'm still talking about the things that I'm talking about. I've exposed a lot. I'm still alive. There's a reason for that. So if you want to protect yourself energetically, it's as simple as getting yourself a 432 hertz tuning fork, tapping it and running it around your body, around your soul system. Pay particular attention to the part behind the diaphragm, because these entities that try and puppet people are very intelligent. That they have infinite wisdom, because they're not stuck in a human body having or a physical body disconnected from that wisdom. And so they know if they come in from behind, even if you're psychic and you can see them, you won't see them at the back. So that's where they come in. So you always make sure when you tap that tuning fork that you push it up behind your back, make sure you put it under each foot, around your whole body, once a day, you're done. It's that simple. Wow. It doesn't take a lot of effort. The consciousness as you're doing that is that I'm protected. A lot of people don't realize you don't even need to do that if your intent is to be protected and you absolutely believe in your intent to be protected. That's our greatest tool, is our intent. But it's helpful. Human beings like to have a ritual. You know, we're used to doing things. So that's just one way to do it. That's a really simple technique. Another way is to play 432 hertz music in the house, but make sure you listen to it first. Don't just put it on and sleep to it if you haven't listened to it first, because there's subliminal stuff that can be put in there. You've got to be really careful. Having a cat will help you, because cats pick up on stuff. They live half in, half out of this dimension, and they can be in all the dimensions at once. That's why they sleep so much. If you have an entity in your house, your cat will climb the walls to get to it. And if it wants to leave the house, then if you've seen it do this weird behavior and you can't see anything that it's actually chasing, and it's allowed to leave the house, let it out. It'll take that entity out. They can capture it in the soul system and remove it. And the evidence of that is that, you know, back in pagan times, they used to actually, it's pretty horrific, kill and mummify a cat and put it beneath the front step of the house to protect the house. Don't know how that would work, but probably some sort of horrible black magic to do it. Right. But, you know, the ancient Egyptians knew that cats were very protective. You know, most cultures know that cats have something a little bit different about them. So that's another thing that you can do. And not all cats are that switched on. So if you've got a really not very bright cat, it might not work that way. But if it's a soul cat, it's come to you for a reason. You know, a stray cat that comes to you is usually part of your soul system. It's found you because it's supposed to work with you. So, you know, these are things that you can use that are really powerful. People can use sage as well. You burn white sage, but it does smell. It's quite pungent. So just be aware that your house is going to smell like you've been having a massive party. People who don't understand what those smells are, they might think something ill of you. So just be careful. It gets through the clothes and stuff as well. If I'm doing a clearing of my own house, I'll often use a bell. With children, especially, if they tell you that they're seeing something, don't play into the fear and make them terrified, but don't poo-poo it either. Say, okay, I'll sort that out. Don't tell them how you're going to do it. Go into the bedroom, if it's in the bedroom, if it's in the closet, if it's under the bed, take some sound, a frequency sound that's like 432 hertz or a bell or something. And as you go through, ding that sound in all of the underbed spaces, in the closet, in all the dark spaces, in the cupboards, and tell that entity it has to leave, and make sure it leaves the house as well, not just the room, but the house. And another thing I suggest for children is don't let there be mirrors in their bedroom. Mirrors are a portal, they're a looking glass. A child that's very psychic will see things in the mirror, and it can be absolutely terrifying.
Wow.
But that's just my suggestion. Mirrors in the bedroom. I don't have a mirror in my bedroom for that reason as well. It's just not something I would recommend.
Well, we've actually just started. We cover our TV because we hardly use it, and that's like the whole Black Mirror idea, which is TVs, screens, phones, devices. I think there's something to that. But you've actually just reminded me, because we've only got one mirror in. We've kind of got like a studio living space, so we've kind of got bedroom, lounge room, dining, study, everything in one space. And we've only got the one mirror. But yeah, even just having it covered, I think if you've got the mirror, so that you're not looking at it all the time. But it's really interesting with kids too, and how that's so, a lot of that stuff that they can see and that comes so naturally to them is so programmed out of them at such an early age. And it's really beautiful to see now, again, this shift that's happening. Like there's over in the States, I know of a couple of groups of people that are now teaching kids to read blindfolded. Like it's incredible. Yeah. And I think I've said it on quite a few of our episodes now, because we always discuss really interesting topics and, moving forward and the way that we're going. And I'm just so excited for this next generation of kids that, people like these, awakened beings that are now having children. And I'm so excited for when we have kids, because they're going to have all of this knowledge, like from the outset. They're not going to have to go through this, what we've gone through, of totally forgetting who we are, being so conditioned out of, who we really are and how we're meant to live. They're just going to have all of this knowledge at the outset. And I can't even imagine. We joke, we're like, our kids are going to be levitating.
I have no doubt.
Yeah. And it's so exciting to just the thought of the things that we'll be teaching them. And that I just think things like entity attachment, I don't even think it's going to be a thing for them. Like
it will not be a thing. The darkest of entities usually have to exist underground anyway, so your most powerful demonic entities, if they've conjured into the third dimensional space, will be deep underground. And that's why we have these deep underground military bases. It's not just to keep it quiet and to keep they have to do that to keep the entities happy, that they conjure in intentionally for warfare. The children that are coming in now, I mean, they just absolutely eclipse us. They really do. They're incredible. So no doubt you'll be bringing something beautiful into the world that we need.
Yeah, so exciting. And I think that's why it's so, the work that you're doing, the work for anyone listening that wants to look any more into this type of thing, I highly recommend Max Lowen, because she's another one that, like horrific experiences, but the work she's doing now and actually working with people to heal from, significant childhood trauma and MK Ultra mind programming and all of that. And, that I think that's just, what a better way to take that experience and transmute it into something beautiful by teaching these things and helping people to heal. And really, like you said, in your bio, about leaving a world, making a world that we want to leave to our children and grandchildren. And that's a big motivator for us as well. Just even in doing our own inner work and healing ourselves and creating a life that, again, is moving out of the system and is we take full responsibility and just really stepping into that ownership of who we are and the life that we want to live, and then being able to raise our kids in that. And then, for future generations, that's been a massive motivation for me to step into this, because it's if it was easy, everyone would do it, and it can be a challenging road, but I think that's part of it. It's all part of it's a rite of passage.
Exactly. We are an infinite soul having a human experience. The only souls that are not infinite are the dark souls, because when they go to a dark dimension, they can be predated upon. So we have absolutely no fear of leaving this body. We shouldn't have any worries around that. I want to commend you both for the work that you're doing, because this is the high level stuff, bringing these conversations to people, not necessarily with me, but these sorts of conversations where people can learn are so pivotal to this whole war that we're experiencing. It is an energetic war, and it's an information war. And as people wake up, we win. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. And for the people, like, possibly some of my family might hear this. It just reminds me of, in the churches we grew up in, my favorite subjects, they would do little classes every now and then on spiritual warfare. And their information doesn't even come close to just 20, 30 minutes of this conversation of how you actually just, tuning forks, like simple things like that. But it's well known in the Christian church. There's I think Jesus is said to have said this, that it's not a physical war. Like, we do not fight against flesh and blood. It's against principalities and powers of darkness. And that is exactly what you just said. And you're leading the charge, so to speak, literally and in all different levels, against these dark forces, despite of what they've done to try to break you and kill you and like just tear you down. And that to me just shows how much more infinitely powerful the good, the love, truth is when that's in your heart versus these beings that have the darkness in the heart.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Our soul frequency, that's what we truly are. So a human experience, if I leave this body now, no big deal. I might come back, I might not, I don't know. But I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved. So it's fine. It's fine. We shouldn't be so worried about death. I don't advocate suicide, 100% against that.
Sure.
But if as long as once you get to a point where you don't fear death anymore, you're invincible.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like we touched on before, I think it's a choice whether you want to come back. I think we're at a point now where we are evolving our consciousness to a point now where I think you can, I've already made a conscious choice. I'm like, I'm so coming back here. If you asked me 2-3 years ago during COVID, I was like, I'm ascending out of this place. I'm never coming back here. This is horrible. Yeah. And now I'm just like, I am so coming back here. I want to be here to see the change, whether I'm fully aware of having that, which I think I will be. I think coming back, on whatever timeline I come back on, like I said, I think we're going to come into this world, the future generations are going to come into this world, knowing who they are. And it's just going to be a completely different reality. And that excites me. But I think for the people I think people do have higher soul callings where they are going to be much more beneficial in the spirit world doing whatever they do. I think we all do work on all different levels. So if they don't want to come back to this earthly plane, fine, it's great. I think it is. It's all a choice. It's whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'll probably come back. I was like you. I wasn't going to come back, but I probably will.
Yeah. So I'll see you in the next life, Rach. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, it's an absolute honor having you on. You're such a wealth of information. Highly recommend your psychic development course because I went through it and I loved it. So where can people find you? How can they connect with you? If they're interested in doing the course, where can they go for that?
Oh, so they can go to www.sixthscience, bit of a mouthful, number 6, TH Science, all one word, .com. So if they want to go there, they can enroll there. And lay love down. So that if you want to learn how to, or you want to find people community to connect with and go out into the ley lines and do this beautiful balancing work, go to www.laylovedown with LEY, laylovedown.com. Yeah, so you can find your community there. We have a lot of wonderful volunteers who've stepped up to help us. It's unbelievable. And the co-founder, my co-founder, Ben Hawkes, is a gorgeous soul. He's worked so hard to bring all these beautiful people together. It is already a multi-country concern. It's moving ahead really quickly. We've got people out on the ground regularly now, and we do meditations and things as well like that. So it's very exciting.
Amazing. Beautiful. Well, yeah, we'll pop those links in the show notes. And I think you sent me your socials. So wherever you're on social media, and we'll pop that in as well. And thanks so much for coming on. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rach.
All right. Well, thank you for the conversation. Everyone go out there, be nice to nature around you. maybe give your cat a little treat and thank them for all the work that they're doing, keeping your house clear. And we'll see everyone next time on Natural AF. Wow, this is a powerful story, and I can't believe the depths that people will go to hurt others. But I also am just so exhilarated and hopeful seeing and listening to Rachel Vaughan talk and what she's doing, the energy she's putting into the world. Love and light, not to sound cliche, truly win. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a lot of the stuff that we discussed during this, it kind of course, it is on the darker side of things, but I think it's very important to share this stuff, because you can't just stick your head in the sand and be like, either one, this doesn't happen at all, this doesn't happen. And I've actually had practitioners that work with the spirit and in the spirit say to me that this stuff doesn't happen and entities can't attach to you and that kind of thing. And I think that can be just as dangerous as actually actively working in those darker realms, because to be oblivious to it, that's a massive blind spot. And that's usually when these things will attach to you, these negative entities and energies. Or for people that, are aware to some degree of things like satanic ritual abuse and some of these occultist practices that happen, but then don't want to look at it because, and I get it, don't get me wrong, I get it. Like when I first found out about this stuff a few years ago, I couldn't look at it. I still to this day can't look at certain things because I'm very much aware of them, but I can't go deep into the research of them because it just physically makes me ill, and I just can't do it. And that's a boundary for me, and that's fine. Everyone should have their boundaries. You don't have to go super, super deep, but I think it is very important to at least be aware of these things that go on so that we can counteract it with good, which is what Rachel is all about, which is, why I love her so much, because she really does alchemize a lot of the pain and suffering that she's been through into something very, very beautiful.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of voices out there pointing to all the dark things, negative things, and there's a lot of fear around it, or just anger and angst. And I remember feeling quite confused and not really sure what to do about it, because I'm a doer. Okay, I hear about all this stuff. Now, what do you do? And I, like she said, we don't need to grab pitchforks and go after anyone. It's very, very important to stand your ground and to speak truth and to put a different energy into the ether. And there's more and more stuff coming out about how important the ether actually is, and the energy and the vibrations, and how instantly connected all of us are. So you can do her course, the psychic development course, and actually learn about ley lines and portals, how to recognize them, go out and then do what they're doing. You can play music in them. You can bring tuning forks, you can sing, and
and a bunch of other stuff, because there's a lot of other stuff that she teaches in the psychic development course. And if you don't want to do the psychic development course, you can just get involved with the Ley Love Down project, which is all about that with the ley lines and portals. But I would say the psychic development course just goes deeper into that stuff and what she's teaching. And, there's other people, like I work with a woman named Dottie that some people may or may not know. And Rachel knows about, I've told Rachel about the work that Dottie does as well. It's basically the same. She's teaching the same stuff about ley lines and portals, and we hold workshops here in the Northern Rivers. And it really doesn't matter where you do it, but I think it is very important to learn about this stuff and how to tap into them and how to tap into your innate gifts and abilities. These are God-given abilities that everyone has, but they've been so conditioned out of us, and we've been so steered away from who we truly are. And that's what we're all about here at Natural AF, is reconnecting back to who we truly are. And a lot of that, I believe, lies in these God-given gifts and reconnecting back to God and nature and these inherent abilities that we were born with.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and share it. Leave us a good comment. Help us if you want. We're open to people making clips on their own and sharing it on social media, and just get the word out there and let the truth be known.
Absolutely. And of course, if you'd like to support us monetarily, you can do that through Natural Art Form. Links are in the show notes. You know the drill. If you heard the intro, you know what our products are all about. And it's, a great time for gift giving. We've actually had some of our market customers like stock up big time because they've just given gifts to everyone. And what a better gift to give than the gift of health.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll catch you next week with another amazing episode. And until then, take care, be healthy, go outside, hug a tree, and be real and natural AF.
Bye, guys.